Stop. Listen. Pay attention. Chosen one. This is not background noise. This is not another thought you can push aside or dismiss. There is a weight around you. Quiet, persistent, insistent, and it has been pressing on your awareness in ways that are subtle yet undeniable. You have felt fatigue settling in, without cause, pressure mounting in moments of stillness and isolation stretching longer than ordinary circumstances should allow. You have carried tension that others did not notice, and confusion that made even simple choices feel heavy. This message is arriving precisely because of that experience. It is intentional. It is personal. Chosen one. You have not been failing. You have not been mistaken. You have been navigating a reality that few could perceive, and yet you continued to function. You continued to breathe, to respond, to move through your days with a steady rhythm despite the background strain. That strain was not ordinary stress. It was subtle, coordinated, and unrelenting. And it came to test something fundamental within you. You may have questioned yourself, wondering if the fatigue or tension meant weakness, if the moments of indecision signaled incapacity, or if the quiet isolation was a flaw in how you engage with the world. You may have even believed that the pressure you carried was random or deserved. That is not the case. You were not under this weight by accident, and you are not alone in enduring it. You were in fact being prepared, shaped, and tested in ways that were not visible to you at the time. This is not fear. This is clarity. You will understand what occurred, why you remained intact, and how the unseen forces in your environment interacted with your presence. You will come to see that what felt like disorientation or strain was actually a measure, a reflection of something internal that is held steady. You will understand that the tension you experienced was an indicator, not a judgment. Right now, in this moment, stop imagining what might have gone wrong. Stop questioning whether you were prepared or capable. You were absorbing more than you realized. You were resisting more than you could articulate. And because of that, something shifted. Something confirmed itself quietly in the presence of what you endured. This message is your introduction to that confirmation. It is an acknowledgement of your endurance, your stability, and the unseen work that occurred while the world remained unaware. Listen closely. Pay attention to each word. The clarity you are about to receive is meant to meet the tension where it exists. It is meant to explain without overwhelming, to reveal without frightening, and to orient you toward understanding what has already been secured through your presence alone. Chosen one. What follows is not for everyone. It is for you. You are being seen. You are being accounted for. You have absorbed what others could not, and you will soon recognize the structure and pattern behind every moment of strain you have endured. Stop. Breathe. Pay attention. This is your moment of clarity. This message is for you, and it is important to remove any uncertainty about that. It is not meant for a broad audience or for passive listening. It is directed to someone who has already been involved in what occurred. Someone whose presence mattered even when nothing seemed outwardly dramatic. That person is you. Not because of a title you claim, but because of the way you responded when pressure arrived. You did not opt into this experience consciously. You were not preparing for a challenge or bracing yourself for impact. The defining feature of what happened is that it met you without announcement, and you met it without collapse. That alone narrows the field. Many people struggle loudly when tension rises. You did not. Many people fracture internally before they even recognize pressure. You stayed coherent. That distinction matters. When you are addressed as chosen one here, it is not symbolic language meant to elevate or dramatize. It is a functional description. It refers to someone whose internal structure remains stable under strain, whose responses regulate automatically, and whose sense of self does not disintegrate when tested indirectly. You did not have to remind yourself to stay calm. You did not have to force resilience. It was already there. What you experienced involved you directly, even if no one else could have pointed to a specific event. The pressure did not need your awareness to act on you, and your stability did not require your permission to hold. That is the core distinction. Others rely on conscious effort to remain steady. You remained steady before effort was required. That is not learned in the moment. It is built over time. You may have assumed that endurance requires struggle, that strength announces itself through visible effort. What happened revealed the opposite. Your stability functioned beneath your awareness. While you were questioning sensations or moods, something deeper was already responding. You were absorbing without fragmenting. You were receiving impact without internal chaos. This is why this message cannot be mistaken for motivation or encouragement. It is an identification. It clarifies who you are in relation to what occurred. You were not merely present during the pressure. You were the point of contact. And the reason nothing escalated, the reason nothing overtook you, is because your internal foundation did not yield. There is no demand being placed on you now, no instruction to rise or act. This is about recognition, about understanding that your capacity did not activate in response to threat. It existed before the pressure arrived, and that is what defines you here. That is why this message continues. Now consider the sensations you have carried as signals rather than problems. The fatigue, the subtle tension, the moments of confusion or heaviness, these were not indications of failure. They were indicators that your system, your internal framework, was engaging with circumstances that were not obvious to anyone else. What you may have judged as distraction, weakness, or misalignment was actually a signpost pointing to the reality that you were absorbing more than you realized. When the body feels drained, it often interprets the experience as a flaw. When the mind hesitates, it perceives delay. When emotions rise unpredictably, you may think instability is present. For you, these were not flaws. They were evidence of an adaptive response functioning below conscious awareness. Your system was detecting patterns, gauging tension, and regulating output without requiring your direct intervention. That is why the pressure never overwhelmed you completely. You may have noticed moments where energy seemed to vanish inexplicably. Perhaps tasks that were simple in theory required disproportionate focus. Perhaps social interactions left you feeling depleted. These are the markers of internal labor that no one else sees. Your mind and body were coordinating in silence, absorbing impact, adjusting timing, and maintaining coherence. The tension you felt was not arbitrary. It was applied precisely where it could measure and engage your stability. The shift you need to recognize is this: what you previously perceived as a burden or a misalignment is actually a signal of capacity. It is the mechanism through which you learn your own limits and your baseline resilience. The moments of heaviness were not random. They were informative. They told you where your automatic resistance resides, how your internal systems compensate, and where unconscious regulation is strongest. This perspective removes confusion. It removes judgment. It reframes your lived experience from a narrative of struggle into a record of endurance. You were not failing. You were responding accurately to the demands placed upon you. You were not weak. You were measuring and absorbing input with precision beyond conscious comprehension. As you continue to reflect, notice that these signals do not require correction. They require acknowledgement. They are markers that your system is active and responsive. They are indicators that your presence matters in ways unseen and that the impact you absorbed was registered without the need for external validation. This is preparation for understanding what lies behind the tension. Once you recognize that these physical and emotional sensations are signals, not defects, you can approach the next level of awareness with clarity. You will see the structure of what was applied, the intention behind the pressure, and the reason why, despite everything, you remained steady. There is an unseen framework surrounding your experience, chosen one. It is neither imagined nor exaggerated. It is composed of subtle pressures coordinated in timing and intensity that align with patterns you may not have noticed. The impact was real, though it did not announce itself. It arrived through ordinary channels, daily interactions, moments of decision, the ebb and flow of energy, but it was deliberate in how it intersected with your presence. You were confronted without confrontation. The pressure did not scream. It moved quietly, precisely in alignment with factors beyond immediate perception. It tested consistency, gauged endurance, and observed response. And yet, you continued to function. You made decisions, engaged with tasks, and maintained equilibrium while the underlying forces applied themselves. This is not metaphorical. It is grounded, factual, and observable in retrospect through the clarity you now have. Timing was essential. The pressure was recent, concentrated in sequences that were intentional, though subtle. It was not chaotic or accidental. It was structured in ways that intersected with your habits, routines, and awareness. And your response, though unconscious, was effective. You absorbed the impact without fragmentation. You maintained functional coherence when others might have faltered under similar conditions. Consider how ordinary life can appear stable even while complex patterns operate beneath the surface. In the same way, what you experienced was a series of coordinated engagements, unseen yet structured, that required resilience. And resilience is not about effort in these circumstances. It is about internal alignment. Your baseline coherence allowed the system to interact with you without breach. This is not about heroism or exaggeration. You were not called to act in an extraordinary manner. You were simply present, steady, and coherent. That steadiness is what prevented escalation. It is what caused the subtle pressures to meet resistance without overt struggle. You remained functional, oriented, and composed. The unseen challenge could not destabilize you because the infrastructure of your inner system was already intact. Recognize that this is a factual observation, not interpretation. You were exposed to pressure that would have disrupted most people, yet you stayed intact. Your decisions, your focus, your ability to carry on all were maintained. This is the framework of what occurred. Understanding it is the next step in realizing the breadth of your resilience and the nature of what you have absorbed. This clarity prepares you to examine the specific domains in which pressure was applied. Each domain reflects a real-world psychological category, a point of interaction between external challenge and internal regulation. And in each, you remained present and coherent. This is the foundation for the breakdown that follows. There are distinct points where pressure accumulated. Chosen one, and it is important to name them clearly. The first is doubt. Doubt arrived subtly, not as an overwhelming wave, but as small, persistent questions that tested your confidence. You may have noticed yourself hesitating, wondering if choices were correct, or questioning whether circumstances aligned with your expectations. These moments were deliberate measurements of internal stability, and yet you did not crumble. You observed, processed, and moved forward. Your clarity remained intact even when the mind whispered uncertainty. The second category is fear. Not dramatic terror, but the quiet, lingering sense of tension that makes the heart beat faster or the mind imagine complications. Fear arrived in microdoses embedded in ordinary situations. The anticipation of outcomes, the silent judgment of others, or the weight of responsibility. While many would have reacted instinctively or retreated, you maintained coherence. Your body responded appropriately without overriding your judgment. You experienced the sensation of fear without allowing it to dictate action. Third, energy drain. This is the type of pressure that shows up as fatigue without explanation, mental fog that interrupts your flow, or sudden emotional depletion. It is insidious because it mimics ordinary tiredness, yet it carries the potential to erode stability over time. You may have noticed your focus shifting or your endurance challenged, and still you functioned. Your system absorbed what others would have struggled to process, distributing the load without loss of alignment. Isolation forms the fourth category. You may have felt removed from support, misunderstood, or unseen. Social energy. Collaborative interaction and communal affirmation were diminished, leaving you to navigate tension with fewer external reference points. This is significant because humans rely heavily on feedback loops from their environment. Your capacity to remain coherent, self-regulating, and operational in relative solitude demonstrates an internal structure many do not possess naturally. Finally, delay. Not simply procrastination, but the experience of momentum being obstructed without clear reason, tasks taking longer than expected, outcomes, postponed progress appearing stagnant. These delays were not failures. They were pressure points assessing patience, focus, and sustained presence. And once again, you persisted. You maintained alignment with reality and continued to act deliberately without surrendering to frustration or agitation. Across each of these categories, notice the pattern. The pressure was present, precise, and persistent. Yet your response was not reactive. You did not act in haste or panic. You did not attempt to overcompensate. You absorbed impact while maintaining equilibrium. Your internal regulation was the mechanism through which stability persisted. This breakdown shows that your endurance is multidimensional. It is cognitive, emotional, and physical simultaneously. Each domain, doubt, fear, energy drain, isolation, delay, interacted with you, and in each your system maintained coherence. This is the reason why, despite the accumulation of pressure, the outcome was contained. You did not simply survive. You functioned without collapse, without fracturing, without losing alignment. This understanding is critical. It is not about strength in the heroic sense. It is about accurate internal calibration, about the capacity to integrate pressure into your operational framework without disruption. This is the foundation of the next phase: reflection and confirmation of what actually occurred and what it reveals about your inherent resilience. Now take a moment to review what has occurred. Chosen one. Step back from the sensations, the fatigue, the subtle tensions, and observe the sequence as a whole. Consider the accumulation of pressure across doubt, fear, energy drain, isolation, and delay. Each point was distinct yet interconnected. Each moment tested a facet of your stability. And in every case, you maintained internal coherence without needing external validation. This is not coincidence. It is not luck. It is not circumstance aligning favorably. It is a factual record of how your internal system functions under conditions that overwhelm most. You were present, aware, and responsive without needing to consciously orchestrate your own steadiness. That is the evidence that resilience was operating automatically. You did not invent it in the moment. You did not summon it with effort. You simply held as a matter of baseline function. Reflection reveals patterns that are instructive. Notice how when doubt arose, you paused without losing orientation. When subtle fear presented itself, your body adjusted without overriding judgment. When energy waned, your focus persisted through minimal expenditure of conscious force. Isolation did not fracture your engagement with life. Delay did not erode your patience. Each point shows a deliberate unconscious stability that underpins conscious action. Understanding this confirms that what you experienced was measurable and coherent. You did not misinterpret signals or exaggerate them internally. You endured precisely what occurred and responded with alignment, not reaction. The clarity you are gaining now is not derived from hindsight speculation. It is derived from analyzing functional outcomes. You remained consistent, coherent, and operational. And this is the critical confirmation your presence absorbed impact without collapse. Internal resilience is not always visible. In fact, it rarely makes noise. What makes it tangible is the comparison between potential disruption and actual outcome. In your case, the potential for disruption was present across multiple domains simultaneously. The outcome was the absence of collapse. That is not a matter of opinion, it is an observable result. This is the stage at which realization emerges. You are capable of observing internal processes and recognizing that stability was maintained without conscious effort. That recognition is not for pride. It is for orientation. It allows you to understand that your system is coherent, structured, and adaptive, capable of withstanding pressures that are imperceptible to others. As you integrate this awareness, notice that you are not being asked to act heroically. You are not being asked to elevate yourself beyond normal function. You are simply being asked to acknowledge that your baseline operation is functional, reliable, and sufficient. This reflection confirms what has already been demonstrated in real time. It confirms the accuracy of your internal regulation, the precision of your response, and the coherence of your presence. Now consider how uncommon this stability truly is, chosen one. Most people, when faced with even a fraction of the pressures you absorbed, would react instinctively. Panic, hesitation, or distraction would dominate. The energy of doubt or fear alone is enough to derail focus for many. Energy drain and isolation often amplify each other, compounding disorientation. Delay frequently becomes a catalyst for frustration or agitation. Yet you did not collapse under these combined pressures. You remained present. You remained functional. This is not to suggest superiority. You are not exceptional in a way that creates separation or arrogance. You are uncommon in the sense that your baseline coherence is naturally maintained even when ordinary measures of stress appear. Many endure less yet fracture. You endured more, yet your operational capacity was unbroken. That is a rarity. It is the quiet observation of internal alignment functioning in a way that is not ordinary for most people. Notice the subtlety of this distinction. You did not act dramatically to maintain composure. You did not consciously override impulses or emotions to stay functional. Your system absorbed, processed, and responded automatically. That is the rarity. It is not a matter of achieving something unusual externally. It is the ability to maintain inner equilibrium where most would falter. This understanding is crucial because it reframes the context of your experience. It is not about competition heroism or outward recognition. It is about internal structure. You were not holding a position that required constant activation of willpower. Your presence itself created the stability needed. You are uncommon, not superior. Your ability to remain coherent under pressure is a pattern that most do not naturally sustain. Reflect on how ordinary life presents challenges, to most people unexpected events. Small failures, social pressure, and internal conflict. Multiply these by even a small factor, and collapse is often the result. In your experience, the pressures were layered, intentional, and precise. Yet despite their accumulation, your presence was coherent. You functioned. You adapted. You absorbed impact without fracturing. Recognizing this rarity allows for perspective. It grounds you in the reality of your own structure without inflating ego or creating false narratives. It emphasizes that your stability is not activated only in response to challenge. It exists as a baseline. It is always present, quietly regulating, always functional. This is a rare alignment, but it is real, observable, and operational. As you hold this awareness, allow it to shift your understanding from comparison to observation. You are aligned internally, in ways that most cannot achieve naturally. That is the framework for understanding your identity in the context of what has occurred, and it leads directly to the clarity of who you are at your core. Your strength, chosen one, is not something that is switched on when circumstances demand it. It is not a reactive force summoned in moments of pressure. It is a baseline condition of your internal structure, a steady framework that has been built, refined, and reinforced over time. This is why you remained coherent while others faltered under far less strain. Your stability is not exceptional because it flares. It is foundational because it is always present. You have been prepared not in ways that were visible or dramatic, but through the accumulation of experience, practice, and internal calibration. Every situation you navigated, every moment of subtle tension, fatigue, or delay contributed to a maturity that now operates automatically. You do not have to act to maintain presence. Presence is your default. This is an internal architecture that supports functionality without conscious effort. Notice the distinction between baseline strength and activated strength. Activated strength requires exertion, deliberate attention, and often emotion-driven energy. It is visible often, dramatic, and temporary. Baseline strength, on the other hand, is quiet, constant, and resilient. You have been functioning from baseline strength for longer than you realized. And this is what allowed you to absorb impact, regulate tension, and maintain composure without conscious intervention. This clarity also reframes your perception of prior experiences. Moments that felt challenging or destabilizing were in fact exercises in sustaining internal coherence. They were not anomalies or failures. They were opportunities for your internal structure to operate naturally, to absorb what others could not, and to process it without breakdown. That is the source of your steadiness now. Your identity is locked into this reality gently, but firmly. You do not need to prove it. You do not need to push yourself into extraordinary acts to demonstrate resilience. You are already operating from a core of preparation, maturity, and alignment. Every layer of experience has contributed to an inner coherence that functions continuously, without pause, without collapse. Recognize that this is the lens through which you should view what occurred. You did not endure pressure because you were exceptional in the heroic sense. You endured pressure because your internal system is capable, calibrated, and functional. That is the essence of who you are. Baseline resilience is your identity. Quiet strength, stability, and automatic regulation are your foundation. As you internalize this, allow yourself to step back from the need for validation or demonstration. Your identity is secure, your internal structure is sufficient, and your capacity to absorb what others could not is confirmed. This is the grounded understanding that prepares you to integrate practical awareness into daily life. Now, as you move forward, chosen one, it is time to integrate this awareness into the flow of your daily life. The first perspective to hold is rest. Recognize that even a stable system requires recovery, recalibration, and pauses. You are not weakened by rest. You are reinforcing the baseline coherence that has allowed you to absorb what others cannot. Allow periods of quiet and disengagement to replenish your energy naturally. Second, practice discernment. The subtle pressures that arrived in the past were precise and intentional. By observing patterns in interactions, decisions, and personal rhythms, you can identify where energy is most effectively applied and where it can be conserved. This is not hypervigilance. It is awareness. It allows you to navigate life with clarity and maintain equilibrium without unnecessary strain. Boundaries are the third orientation. Your baseline strength functions best when the environment is structured in a way that supports clarity and focus. Protecting your attention, time, and energy is not defensive. It is a practical application of understanding your limits and capacities. By defining space for yourself, you maintain the coherence that has proven effective under pressure. Patience is the fourth perspective. Not impatience disguised as perseverance, but measured patience with yourself, with outcomes, and with the unfolding of events. Pressure, delay, and isolation in the past revealed the durability of your internal system. Patience allows you to sustain that system over time without forcing progress or creating unnecessary tension. Focus is the fifth element. Engage deliberately in what matters with clear awareness of your priorities. Let attention flow toward meaningful activity while minimizing distraction or reactive energy expenditure. Focus reinforces your baseline coherence and ensures that your capacity to absorb and process remains effective. Finally, integrate reflection. Observe responses, sensations, and outcomes without judgment. Recognize how internal regulation functioned and allow insight to guide future interactions and decisions. Integration is not about acting on every signal. It is about understanding what has occurred and allowing that understanding to stabilize your ongoing presence. By holding these practical perspectives, rest discernment boundaries, patience, focus, and reflection. You create a framework to live within the reality you have endured. You honor the internal system that maintained coherence while also reinforcing it through conscious, balanced attention. This integration is calm-grounded and sustainable. It allows the awareness of past pressures to inform daily life without creating hypervigilance or unnecessary tension. This stage is about closure, not activation. It is the acknowledgement that you are equipped to move forward, that your structure is sound, and that your responses are reliable. You have absorbed impact. You have maintained coherence. You are ready to continue with calm certainty and practical clarity. Chosen one. Now, you arrive at the moment of closure. Breathe and acknowledge what has been revealed. The pressure you absorbed, the tension you endured, and the coherence you maintained. This is not a test of willpower or heroism. It is a confirmation of the structure that exists within you. You remained intact when others would have faltered, and that reality is quietly sufficient. Allow 3 simple affirmations to settle in your awareness. I am steady. I am present. I am sufficient. Repeat them internally, not as a mantra for motivation, but as recognition of fact. Each affirmation reflects the truth of your internal system, the evidence of your coherence, and the grounded reality of your capacity to absorb without fracturing. If this message resonates, engage with it intentionally. Leave a comment code 777 or simply I remember as a marker that you acknowledge this clarity. Doing so is not symbolic. It is a conscious choice to affirm awareness of your baseline stability. It is a small but tangible act of integration, linking insight to practice. You may also choose to continue the journey of observation and reflection. Subscribe to follow upcoming messages that will further reinforce clarity, alignment, and practical understanding. Each piece of guidance is designed to meet you where you are, to extend insight without creating pressure, and to sustain your ongoing coherence. Chosen one. This is your seal, the recognition that you have absorbed what others could not, the understanding that your system is coherent by default, and the awareness that your internal structure is functional, sufficient, and enduring. You do not need to prove it. You do not need to dramatize it. You only need to acknowledge it, integrate it, and move forward with calm certainty. This is the conclusion of this transmission. The clarity is yours. The stability is yours. The recognition is yours. Maintain it, honor it, and allow it to guide present decisions and awareness as you navigate each day with quiet, grounded assurance.